Hey everyone, I'm Ted Rockwell with Continuing Education. Today we're having an inspiring conversation about using education to pivot to a new career. My guest today is sharing her experiences returning to school to achieve one of her dreams of becoming a physical therapist. Sarah Riessen?
Yes, Riessen. Got it.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us here today.
Of course.
Why don't you help set the stage? I understand you're returning to college after actually being out in the workforce. What was did you actually get an undergraduate degree before this?
I did get an undergraduate degree. I went to Bucknell University. I graduated with a degree in international relations, so nothing to do with physical therapy, but then have worked for the past handful of years in a variety of different industries and circled back now, going back to school to pursue that degree, second degree.
So you were in the workforce and you're slaving away for someone else and you're realizing you're not really connecting in a way that you wanted to. How did you come to the realization that you wanted to change paths, become a physical therapist? What's behind that decision?
That's a big question, I think. I think there are a handful of things. Yes, slaving away, but also loving a lot of the jobs that I had. And I think that's why I worked for a handful of years, because each job there were aspects that I really enjoyed. So I loved what I was doing intellectually, but not necessarily what I was doing with my body in sitting at a desk all day. And then I loved what I was doing with my body outside, guiding, doing all of these things, but wasn't as intellectually challenged. And so coming to a place to bring those things together has been a path and has been taken a lot of reflection. But I think that working has really led me to that and getting me some good experience before heading back to school again.
Okay, excellent. Once you realized that you wanted to pursue the path of becoming a physical therapist, how did you get started? What did you do first?
I asked a lot of questions of a lot of people, pretty much anyone who would listen. But I really reached out to CU and started looking at what was available in Colorado, so where I was, and then reached out to CU in academic advising, and then was connected to some fantastic advisors here that I could bounce some questions off of, what is the first step? How do I sign up for my first class? Which class should that be? To start kind of moving towards an end goal, which is really the starting line in a lot of different ways.
So as you're getting involved with CU, what was literally that first step? You ended up trying to reach out to someone on main campus initially?
Yes. Well, yes and no. I couldn't, I looked up all of the advising appointments, made an advising appointment, and then was promptly transferred from an academic advising appointment to a pre-health advising within the continuing education department. And then from there was connected to other people. But that was definitely the first entryway after individual research, et cetera, on what the requirements are. That first step was advising.
Okay. So once you've kind of realized, okay, I've got some advising, they suggested some things to you, right? That there were a few classes you could be taking, that sort of thing. Why don't you describe a little bit about that and then how you balanced work and then taking those classes?
Sure. So I had done a bunch of research on my own of what were the classes I needed to take. And so definitely a lot of kind of information gathering for a handful of months before actually jumping in and going to an advising appointment. Though once I got to that advising appointment, we really created graphs of different potential schedules. So saying, okay, what are your goals? What do you have more time of? Do you have enough time? Do you have more kind of leniency in that path? So charting out different iterations of schedules. And then my desire to continue working the job. I was still working evening classes and online classes were kind of what I could do right away. And so saying, okay, what are those prereqs that I can knock off while I'm still working full time, while I'm still kind of continuing my life as it is? And then when do I want to make this shift? And kind of what is that cutoff point of when I want to dive fully in?
So you've said in the past, when we've done pre-interviews preparing for this, that CE was the kickstart for achieving your goal of going back to school. Talk a little bit more about that. How did CE help you really kickstart that process?
I think that I did a bunch of work beforehand to figure out, what my goals were. But there's a lot that's unknown when you're going back to school, and a lot that feels like it could be a roadblock. And coming to CE through the continuing education, so coming to CU through CE, really gave me the confidence to say, okay, I am doing the right things. I am kind of checking the boxes that I need to be able to move forward. And so to give me the confidence to sign up for those classes, start taking the courses, and start moving forward kind of on some of those pieces. So I think you can achieve a lot, sifting through a lot of information yourself, but I personally needed the advising and needed the structure that CE offers.
Sounds like advising played a prominent role in this decision, which you could imagine, physical therapy isn't for everyone. It's a fairly challenging field to go into. Why don't you talk a little bit more about how meeting with that advisor helped not only map out where you were going, but maybe gave you the confidence to take the next step?
Through advising, I was asked a lot of questions that mandated a lot of self-reflection on why is this important to me? What am I willing to commit to? And what's the kind of pie chart that creates a really solid applicant? Do I want to invest in all aspects of that pie chart? And so in terms of volunteering and your engagement in the community, what do you do now? What do you want to add to that? In terms of your academics, what have you done? What do you need to learn? So those questions really helped me feel grounded in, yes, this is a decision that I want. I can answer all of those questions and honestly answer those questions. And so that was really helpful, because as much as you can think in your own head about it, to have that engaging conversation and really real conversation with someone who's talked to many students definitely gave me the confidence to say, okay, yes, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try. And felt very supported in that decision as well.
That's excellent. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this that we are actually live on Facebook right now. And so if you're watching us, and I know some of you are watching us, make sure to write a question in the boxes below this live video, and we'll make sure to ask Sarah these questions. So why don't you talk a little bit about being successful in work that doesn't necessarily have the same structure as going to a face-to-face class? What did you discover about how you approach that work, and talk about the difference of having an end goal in mind while you're doing that?
And so I think that was something I was worried about. I've never been in an unstructured classroom experience. I went to university where I was in class all the time. And so I ended up taking a self-paced course and an online course. And so both of those, I took them concurrently, so I didn't, and so the self-paced course was more challenging than expected. But I think both of them, with deadlines, without deadlines, the mentality is completely different. And so learning content and having an end goal, learning content and being able to say, this will be applicable in couple months from now. This is applicable in how I operate on a daily basis now, how I think about things differently. If it's in statistics, or if it's in psych, or if it's in anatomy, all of those things relating to physical therapy had so much more pertinence to me. And so though my stats class, I'm not looking to pursue statistics, but those aspects and pieces of that course I still think about today in the next courses that I'm taking. And so it really has a whole different meaning to me. And I think my personal journey was I wanted to go to college, I wanted to go to university and pursue that. And it felt like a track that I was on. I was so lucky to be doing that. And this feels like a choice that I'm working for, which just has a different connotation to every course that you take and every class that you attend. And so definitely just feels very different at this point.
Yeah, I can imagine that going from kind of face-to-face classroom experience for college and then going to work and then coming back and having an unstructured experience could also be a bit of a challenge. Would you recommend self-paced work for just anybody? What kind of recommendations would you have if someone is looking to take a self-paced course?
Yeah, I don't think it's for everybody. I think that it has its own challenges, but also when you are working full-time has a ton of flexibility. And so for me, I actually I took 2 days of PTO, and so that's 16 straight hours of work time that I was able to dedicate to that class. And so being able to push ahead and really kind of own that process was really important to me. And so if you have the flexibility to do something like that in terms of your courses, in terms of your work, I think it can be really beneficial in accelerating a course. If you aren't as committed to that timeline, or procrastinate perhaps, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend a self-paced course, but I think it's a wonderful option if your schedule allows.
So you're saying you don't procrastinate?
I'm saying I do my best not to procrastinate.
No. Sorry. Yeah, if you procrastinate, that's pretty much my whole life, is procrastination. But,
that's fair.
That's why you're in that seat and I'm over here. I have a question from our Facebook audience here. At what point can I get help from our advisors at CE here? And do you need to be accepted or enrolled? So you could probably answer that, and if you have any questions, I could probably help answer it as well.
Yeah, definitely. So my experience was, before I actually started taking a course, I was able to speak with advisors to make sure that I was on the right track. Before I was connected to the pre-health advisor, I went to academic advising. And so I wasn't technically a pre-health student before being enrolled, but perhaps that's not a normal situation. I'm not exactly sure, but I definitely got advising before I had to commit fully to the course and moving forward.
Sarah's is a special circumstance because of the program you're going into. We pretty much will see anyone who is looking to get academic advising. We will see main campus students, particularly students who are maybe in academic difficulty, but we'll see pretty much any main campus student if they would like to meet with one of our advisors. Anyone who's got questions about how they can take the next step with their educational goals, we'll see them as well. Our mission really is to serve, through advising, students who are looking to pursue whatever their educational path is. So you were right to get advice on coming to us with pre-health for sure. And I'm glad to hear that has gone smoothly for you.
Yes.
It's a challenging subject. There's a lot there that needs to be, if you were a liberal arts, were you a liberal arts student? If you were,
I was.
So there's a lot of science that you have to catch up on. And you were talking just before this, before we got the camera rolling, about needing to knock out some prereqs. What prereqs are you knocking out right now?
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting process. Right now, I am working to essentially test out of a certain level of math and a certain level of chemistry. And so they're like prereqs for prereqs. And so some calculus and some chemistry. I am chugging away on to get into the appropriate levels for the fall. So it's coming along.
Sounds really, really easy. Calculus, chemistry. Yeah. So how are you able to balance? Those are tough classes, along with working, and then also still finding time to. You mentioned you went up to Winter Park over the weekend. You were working up there, but I imagine you're taking time for yourself, mountain biking, that sort of thing. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, it's been a process, definitely. And so I actually, about a week or two ago, decided to commit fully to the school side of things. And so for my semester classes before this, I was taking them in the evenings, self-paced. And now I'm fully studying and will start classes full-time in the summer. And so that was a big decision to say, what is the, what can you handle in the pie chart of your life, not just the pie chart of going to PT school. And, you do have work and you have school and you have your social life and your friends and your mental sanity. And so how do all those pieces play together was definitely something that I've considered really highly. And so now I'm just studying and working on the weekends. So.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I think we've already answered this sort of, but maybe you could get into some specific tips. This is also from Facebook. What tips do you have for succeeding in a self-paced course? You kind of talked a little bit about that, but do you have any specificity to some of the things people should keep in mind when approaching a course like that?
I'd say it's pretty personal in how you work. I would say, so the course is available for a certain amount of time. I think it's available for, I want to say 6 months, so it's longer than a semester. So you do have more time to complete it than a normal semester course. In in my mind, I told myself the course was available for 3 months. And so I said, okay, I have this condensed timeline. Now, do I want to spend 3 months doing it, or do I want to try and kind of move that back? And so I'd set weekly goals for myself, and if I didn't achieve that goal, I'd try to push it to the next week and combine that. And so that was a personal process of saying, give yourself that shortened time, and you always have the flexibility and the security that you have more if life gets away from you, if you have to work more, if one week is crazy, you of course have that flexibility. But that was what worked for me in providing additional structure in kind of an unstructured academic environment. And I do have to say, even though it's self-paced, the professors are very present. And so I reached out to my professors multiple times saying, this is what my goal is. Is that reasonable? Do you think that's like an appropriate process? And are you able to get back to me with feedback on my essays and my writing promptly so that I can take that moving forward? Because I do want to complete this quickly. And so very responsive, very kind of respectful to my process as well. And so I'd say, even though it's self-paced, I guess the biggest thing would be, treat it as though you know that professor and that you know that person, and reach out to them for guidance, because that's what they're there for.
You've taken other online courses too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so is the same kind of advice there on other online courses?
Yeah, I would definitely say so in terms of the communication with professors. Other online courses, I would have like Zoom meetings if there were concepts or, things that I wasn't positive on. That I'd say you have less flexibility, because each week the content comes out and you complete it that week and then move forward. Self-paced, the content is all available day one, and it's up to you to feel overwhelmed by that or to chunk it out yourself and say, okay, this is my goal, this is how I'll achieve it. But the presence of the professors and their presence to you as a student, even though you're remote, was very similar.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So what wisdom would you share to someone who is looking to decide whether they should be changing careers and
Mm-hmm.
whether they're on the right career path and if they should return to education?
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of advice would you give to someone like that if they were approaching you now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I can only speak from my experience, of course, and what was really helpful for me was talking to people and saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. These are my past roles and these things I loved about them. So is there a thread that weaves through those things? Is there some commonality that I can kind of speak to? And then, do I know people who've done those things, and can I reach out to them and learn from them? And so if you can shadow, I think shadowing is what cemented the fact that not only am I intellectually interested in this, but I want to do this with my time.
What do you mean by shadow? What is that concept?
Yeah, so in the medical world, of course, it's much more common, but I know that you can shadow, you can go to work with someone essentially, and learn about what they do and ask them questions and see, theoretically, I'm interested in this, but what does that 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day look like? Because I think that's the biggest question coming from undergraduate is you've never worked before, and so you don't know what your day feels like, what it feels like to be at a desk or what it feels like not to be. And so I think if you can shadow and if you can find those threads and start pulling on them, that was what convinced me that yes, the financial investment is worth it. The time investment is worth it. School is what I need to achieve this goal. And so I definitely say getting real life experience and talking to the people that know you about the things that you're thinking about is just, that's really what did it for me.
So did you end up shadowing? What did you see a specific specialty in physical therapy? What was that about?
Yeah, so in physical therapy, you can work from infants to senior citizens to everything in between. And so I did end up shadowing, and I was lucky enough to be connected at an outpatient clinic. So people who hurt their elbow playing tennis, people who are coming back from knee surgery, and walk into the clinic, you see them and they walk out. And then also able to go to clinics that are more rehab intensive. And so brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and saying, look at the breadth of this. Got to shadow in schools, so saying what kind of care does the school system provide to kids, and why is that important that it's provided as a public service? And so definitely that showed me that I don't have to be interested in every single avenue in physical therapy, but I want to be hooked by some of them. And so that was what I did.
How did you end up at CU after doing that? What was your path towards actually entering into the CU system?
And so it really was the continuing education, the flexibility of the night courses, the self-paced courses, of saying, I'm really interested in this, but I'm not ready to leave my job yet. I'm not ready to kind of step off that cliff and really commit to it. And so CE was the kind of entryway to that, of saying, okay, you can keep the consistency of the life that you have, of the job that you have, but you can also start pursuing this other goal. And I couldn't find that anywhere else in Colorado, where I live.
Is that where we are?
Yeah, where the heck are we?
Well, excellent. What's next? What are you thinking in any particular specialty in physical therapy, and then just what else?
Wow, a lot of stuff. Well, right now studying. This summer, I'm taking some classes, enjoying Colorado really. And then I do have a specialty in mind, though my mind is also open to be changed, because it's a bit of a path to get to the end of this school process. But right now I'm thinking that I want to do more neuro, and so brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, post-stroke, those types of things. And so how do you, people that are injured and have lived in their bodies one way their whole life, how do you learn to live in your body in a new way? And so that's what I'm interested in now, and a whole lot of, I think, exposure to come over the next handful of years. And so that could definitely change, but that's the goal now. And I'm so lucky in Denver that Craig is in South Denver, and they're an amazing rehab institute. And so they're a teaching institution as well. And so they are fantastic in terms of learning in that way.
It is just so exciting to speak to students like yourself who have, come back to school and found a path through, and I'm really inspired hearing your story of, wanting to do something with this that would help other people. So I really would like to thank you for joining us here today and taking the time to share your story with everyone here on Facebook. And thank you all for joining us here on Facebook Live for our Own Your Journey conversations with Sarah Riessen? Riessen. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with that. Sarah Riessen. Thanks so much for tuning in, and join us for our next Own Your Journey conversation.